"It hurts being without a man," said the giant Apache girl to the shy farmer. The shy farmer lived a quiet life far from the noise of towns and crowds. His small farm sat near open land, where the fields stretched wide and the sky felt endless. Every morning he woke up before the sun, not because he had to, but because silence felt easier to face than people. He worked with his hands, trusted the soil, and believed that land never judged a man. Plants grew if you cared for them. Animals stayed loyal if you treated them well. People, however, were harder to understand. He was not poor, but he was not ambitious either. His needs were simple. A warm meal, clean water, honest work, and peaceful nights were enough for him. He spoke little, and when he did, his voice was soft, careful, as if he was afraid of taking up too much space. Many in nearby areas thought he was strange or distant, but the truth was simpler. He had learned long ago that staying quiet kept him safe from disappointment. As a young man, he had once dreamed of a family. He imagined coming home to laughter, shared meals, and someone waiting for him at the end of the day. But life had slowly taught him to lower those dreams. Rejection, misunderstandings, and feeling invisible had shaped him into someone who expected nothing. Over time, hope became something he packed away, like an old tool he no longer believed would work. The farmer found comfort in routine. He knew exactly when the wind would change direction and when the soil needed rest. His animals trusted him completely. They followed him without fear, responding to his presence calmly. In their eyes, he saw no judgment, only acceptance. That was enough to keep him going. The land around his farm was old and rich with history. Nearby lived different communities, including Apache families whose roots ran deep in the area. The farmer respected them from a distance. He had always admired their strength, pride, and connection to the land. But admiration did not give him courage. He believed such people belonged to a world far beyond his quiet existence. In the evenings, after finishing his work, he often sat on the wooden steps outside his small house. The sun would dip low, painting the sky in orange and gold. These moments were the hardest. When the day's work ended, silence grew louder. Loneliness had a way of speaking when everything else went quiet. He sometimes wondered if something was wrong with him. Why did talking feel so difficult? Why did his heart race around others? Why did he feel smaller in conversations, even when no one tried to make him feel that way? He never found clear answers. Instead, he focused on what he could control: his work, his land, and his solitude. People occasionally passed by his farm, travelers or neighbors needing help. He never turned anyone away. He offered water, directions, or assistance without hesitation. Kindness came easily to him. Confidence did not. When praised, he grew uncomfortable. When thanked, he shrugged it off. He never believed he deserved much attention. The farmer had learned early that being unnoticed was easier than being rejected. So he built a life where no one expected anything from him, and where he did not expect anything from others. Yet deep inside, there was a quiet ache he never spoke about. It showed itself in small ways, in how long he lingered over meals meant for one, in how he avoided celebrations, in how he watched families from afar without envy but with a soft sadness. He told himself that some people were simply meant to live alone, and that accepting it was a kind of strength. One afternoon, while repairing a fence near the edge of his land, he noticed movement in the distance. At first, he thought it was just another passerby. But as the figure came closer, he realized this person was different. Taller than most, strong in build, walking with confidence and purpose. The farmer felt his chest tighten not from fear but from uncertainty. He stood still, unsure whether to greet or retreat. Social moments caught him unprepared, like sudden storms. As the figure approached, he could see it was an Apache woman. Her presence felt powerful, not loud or aggressive, but steady and unshaken. She carried herself like someone who had faced many things and survived them all. The farmer wiped his hands on his trousers, suddenly aware of his appearance. his posture, his quiet nature. He felt small standing there, even though he had worked the land all his life. Strength, he realized, came in many forms, and hers was visible in ways his never was. She did not speak to him that day. She simply passed by, nodding once in acknowledgement. That single nod lingered with him long after she was gone. It was not rude. It was not cold. It was respectful. Still, it stirred something inside him, something he had buried deep. That evening, he found it hard to focus on his usual tasks. His thoughts drifted back to her presence, her calm confidence, the way she seemed fully comfortable in her own skin. He wondered who she was, where she came from, and why her passing had unsettled him so deeply. He told himself it meant nothing. People crossed paths all the time. There was no reason to think more of it. Yet, as night fell and the stars appeared, his usual peace did not come. Instead, there was a quiet awareness, an unspoken sense that something in his carefully balanced world had shifted. The shy farmer did not know it yet, but his quiet life, built on solitude and low expectations, was about to be challenged. Not by force, not by drama, but by honesty, presence, and a truth neither of them could avoid forever. And as he lay awake that night, listening to the sounds of the land he loved, he felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. It was not fear. It was not hope. It was the fragile beginning of change, gentle, uncertain, and impossible to ignore. The next morning, the farmer woke earlier than usual. The sky was still dark, and the air carried a cool calm. He told himself the restless night meant nothing. Still, as he stepped outside, his eyes moved toward the edge of the land where he had seen her the day before. Nothing was there, only fields and quiet wind. He exhaled slowly and went back to work. Days passed, but the memory of that brief moment did not fade. He noticed himself listening more closely to footsteps, looking up whenever movement appeared in the distance. He felt foolish for it. He reminded himself that people passed by all the time, and that curiosity did not mean importance. Yet something about her presence had settled into his thoughts like a seed. A few days later, he saw her again. This time, she was closer to his land, walking along the dirt path that cut through the open fields. The farmer was carrying a bucket of water when he noticed her tall figure moving steadily forward. His first instinct was to turn away, but his feet refused to move. He stood there unsure, heart beating faster than he liked. She stopped when she saw him. For a brief moment they simply looked at each other. The farmer nodded, unsure what else to do. To his surprise, she spoke first, her voice calm and clear. "Good morning." Her voice was steady, neither soft nor sharp, just honest. Good morning," he replied, stumbling slightly over the words. She smiled, not a wide smile, but a small one that reached her eyes. "You live here?" "Yes," he said quickly. "I mean this farm, I do." "It's good land," she said, looking around. "You take care of it." He shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. "I try." There was a pause, but it did not feel awkward. She seemed patient, as if silence did not bother her. He realized that most people rush to fill quiet moments. She did not. "I'm passing through often," she said. "My family lives not far from here." He nodded again. "You're welcome to pass any time." "I know," she replied gently. "Still, it's kind of you to say." Her words were simple, but they stayed with him. Kind. No one had called him that in a long time. After that day, their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes it was just a greeting as she walked by. Other times, she stopped for a short conversation. She never pushed him to speak more than he was ready to. When he struggled to find words, she waited. When he answered briefly, she did not seem disappointed. The farmer slowly learned her name. She learned his. He learned that she helped her family with physical work, that she was strong not just in body but in responsibility. She learned that he had lived on the land most of his life, that he preferred quiet mornings and simple routines. Their conversations were small but meaningful. They talked about weather, soil, animals, and the way seasons changed people as much as land. He was surprised by how easy it felt to talk to her. He still felt nervous, but it was different, less heavy, more alive. Others sometimes watched from a distance. A shy farmer and a tall Apache woman made an unexpected pair. He noticed the looks, the quiet curiosity, but she seemed unaffected. She walked proudly, spoke honestly, and never lowered herself to meet others' expectations. One afternoon, she accepted his offer of water. They sat near the shade of a tree, the sun warm but gentle. For a moment, neither spoke. "You don't talk much," she said, not accusing, just observing. "I know," he replied. "I'm better at listening." "That's not a bad thing," she said. "Too many people speak without meaning." He glanced at her, surprised. "You don't mind?" She shook her head. "No, silence tells the truth sometimes." That sentence stayed with him long after she left. As days turned into weeks, he noticed changes in himself. He stood a little straighter. He looked forward to certain moments of the day. His loneliness did not disappear, but it felt lighter, less sharp. He realized that her presence did not demand anything from him. She did not try to change him. She simply allowed him to be. One evening, as the sky darkened and the air cooled, she stopped by longer than usual. They spoke about family, about expectations placed on them by others. "People think strength means never needing anyone," she said quietly. "But that's not true," he nodded. "I thought being alone meant I was strong. Maybe I was just afraid." She looked at him, then really looked at him. There was no judgment in her eyes, only understanding. "You're not weak," she said. "You're careful." That word, careful, felt like a gift. When she finally stood to leave, the farmer felt something tighten in his chest. Not pain, not fear, just awareness. As she walked away, he realized that his quiet life was no longer untouched. Something real had entered it, not loud, not sudden, but steady and honest. And for the first time in many years, the farmer did not push that feeling away. He let it stay, unsure where it would lead, but willing to find out. The days continued to pass in a steady rhythm, but something between them had quietly deepened. Their conversations grew longer, not because either tried to force them, but because silence between them felt safe. The farmer no longer rushed back to his work when she appeared. He still felt shy, still chose his words carefully, but he no longer felt the need to hide. One late afternoon, the sky was heavy with clouds, and the air carried the smell of coming rain. The farmer was stacking tools when he saw her approaching along the familiar path. Her steps were slower than usual. There was a weight in her movement that he had not seen before. "You might want to come in," he said softly. "Rain's coming." She nodded and followed him toward the small shelter near his house. Rain began to fall soon after, gentle at first, then steady. The sound filled the quiet space around them. For a long moment, neither spoke. He noticed that she seemed distant, her eyes fixed on the falling rain. The usual calm strength in her posture was still there, but something underneath it felt strained. "Are you all right?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. She hesitated. It was the first time he had seen her pause like that. Then she took a slow breath. "Some days are heavier than others," she said. He nodded, unsure what to say but willing to listen. She leaned against one of the wooden posts, arms crossed loosely. "People see me and think I have everything figured out," she continued. "They think I'm strong enough to handle anything on my own." He looked at her carefully. "And are you?" She gave a quiet, tired smile. "Most days, yes, but strength doesn't stop the heart from feeling empty." Her words hung in the air between them. He had felt that emptiness for years, but he had never named it out loud. Hearing it spoken so simply made his chest tighten. She looked at him then, her expression open in a way he had never seen before. "It hurts being without a man," she said softly. "Not because I can't survive alone, I can, but because carrying everything alone gets heavy." The farmer felt his breath catch. He was not prepared for such honesty. No one had ever spoken to him like that, trusting him with something so personal. "I didn't plan to say that," she added quickly, "but it's the truth." He stared at the ground for a moment, searching for words. His heart was racing, not from fear but from the weight of being seen as someone worthy of such trust. I don't think wanting someone makes you weak," he finally said. "I think it means you're human." She studied his face as if measuring his sincerity. "You really believe that?" "Yes," he said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "I've been alone a long time, not because I wanted to be, but because I thought it was safer." "Safer from what?" she asked gently. "From disappointment," he admitted. "From not being enough." She stepped a little closer, not invading his space, just closing the distance enough for him to feel her presence. "You don't see yourself the way others do." He gave a small, nervous laugh. "I don't think others see me much at all." "I do," she said simply. Those two words hit him harder than anything else she had said. Rain continued to fall, but neither noticed it anymore. The world outside the shelter felt far away. "I'm not asking for anything," she said after a moment. "I just needed to say it out loud. To someone who wouldn't judge me." "I won't," he said quickly. "I promise." She nodded, relief visible in her eyes. "That's why I said it to you." Something shifted then, not suddenly, not dramatically, but deeply. The farmer realized that the careful walls he had built around himself were cracking. Not because someone pushed them down, but because he wanted to let someone in. They talked for a long time after that, about loneliness, about expectations, about how people often misunderstood strength and silence. He shared things he had never said before, how he sometimes felt invisible, how he avoided gatherings because he never knew where he belonged. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she did not rush to comfort him with empty words. She simply said, "You don't have to disappear to be safe." The rain eventually slowed, then stopped. The air felt fresh, clean. When she finally prepared to leave, there was a quiet understanding between them. Nothing had been promised, nothing had been labeled, but something real had been shared. As she walked away, the farmer stood watching her until she disappeared down the path. His chest felt full in a way that was unfamiliar and unsettling, yet warm. That night he did not lie awake fighting his thoughts. Instead, he let them come. He thought about her honesty, her courage to speak truth without shame. He thought about his own fear and how it had shaped his life more than he ever admitted. For the first time, he asked himself a different question, not whether he was enough, but whether he was willing to try. The answer did not come easily, but it came honestly. Yes. And that quiet decision, made alone under a dark sky, marked the moment his life truly began to change. Days still began with sunrise and ended with quiet evenings. Yet inside both of them, something had shifted, something steady and alive. The farmer noticed it first in small ways. He no longer avoided the path where she passed. He no longer felt his chest tighten with fear when he heard footsteps. Instead, there was a calm alertness, like waiting for a familiar sound. He still worked hard, still lived simply, but his thoughts were no longer closed off. They wandered. They wondered. She continued to visit, sometimes staying longer, sometimes just stopping to talk for a few minutes. After the rain-filled confession, she did not pull away in embarrassment. She also did not push closer. She treated the truth they had shared with respect, as if it were something fragile and valuable. One morning, she arrived while he was repairing a broken gate. Without asking, she picked up a tool and helped him. Her movements were strong but careful. He watched her for a moment, then smiled to himself. He realized how rare it was for someone to work beside him, not above him, not watching from a distance, but with him. "You don't have to help," he said softly. "I know," she replied. "I want to." They worked quietly, the sound of metal and wood filling the air. It felt natural. There was no pressure to speak, no awkwardness. When the gate was fixed, they stood back and looked at their work. "Looks good," she said. "You made it better," he replied honestly. She smiled, and this time it was warmer, more open. As days passed, they began sharing more of their lives. She spoke about growing up with responsibility placed on her shoulders early, How being tall and strong made people expect her to lead, to protect, to carry others. How little space there was for her own doubts. The farmer listened carefully. "People forget that strong people get tired too," he said one evening. She nodded. "They forget, or they don't want to see it." He began to understand that her strength was not armor, it was effort. And effort could wear someone down. In return, he shared his struggles more openly. He spoke about how silence had become his shield, how avoiding attention felt safer than risking rejection, how he often felt invisible even when surrounded by others. She did not tell him to change. She did not tell him to be louder or braver. She only said, "You deserve to be seen." Those words followed him for days. The farmer slowly started to change, not because he was forced to, but because he felt supported. He held eye contact a little longer. He spoke when he had something to say instead of swallowing his words. When others passed by the farm, he greeted them instead of hiding behind his work. She noticed. "You're standing straighter," she said one afternoon. He laughed quietly. "I didn't mean to." "Still," she said, "it's happening." She too began to soften, not weaker but more open. She allowed herself to rest when she visited. Sometimes she simply sat, watching the sky, letting quiet surround her. The farmer learned that strength did not always mean movement. Sometimes it meant stillness. There were moments of doubt, too. Nights when the farmer wondered if he was imagining the connection. Times when she questioned whether she was asking too much by letting herself care. Neither spoke these fears out loud, but they existed, lingering in the background. One evening, as they walked along the edge of the field, the sun setting slowly, she stopped. "I'm not used to this," she said. "To what?" he asked. "To not carrying everything alone," she replied. He looked at her carefully. "You don't have to decide anything now," she nodded. "I know, that's what makes it feel safe." They did not touch. They did not make promises, but something stronger than words was forming: trust. The farmer realized that companionship was not about filling loneliness quickly. It was about walking alongside someone without trying to change their pace. He learned that he did not need to become someone else to be worthy. She learned that allowing someone to stand beside her did not reduce her strength. It shared it. Together they were not louder, they were steadier. As the season shifted, the land changed color. Fields grew quieter. Evenings came sooner. With change all around them, neither felt afraid. For the first time, change felt gentle. They were still learning, still careful, still honest. And in that slow, respectful space between them, both began to understand something important. Growth did not come from force or fear, but from patience, truth, and the courage to stay present. What lay ahead was still unknown, but neither felt alone walking toward it anymore. The final change did not arrive with noise or sudden events. It came quietly, the same way trust had grown between them. Days continued as before, yet both of them felt different inside. The farmer no longer felt like he was only surviving each day. He was living it. And the Apache woman no longer felt like she was standing alone against the weight of the world. One early morning, the farmer stood outside watching the sky brighten. The land looked calm, almost peaceful, but his thoughts were full. He realized something important had settled into his heart. He was no longer afraid of connection. He still felt shy, still careful, but fear was no longer in control. When she arrived later that day, he noticed she looked lighter too. Her steps were steady, but her shoulders were more relaxed. She greeted him with a warm look that felt familiar and safe. They spent the day working together, moving easily side by side. There was no need to plan conversations. Words came when they mattered. Silence filled the rest. As the sun lowered, they sat near the edge of the field, watching the sky change color. The farmer took a slow breath. He knew if he did not speak now, he might lose the moment. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. She turned toward him, giving him her full attention. "So have I," he smiled gently. "I used to believe being alone meant I was strong, but I see now that I was just afraid of being hurt." She nodded. I used to believe needing no one was strength. But it only made the road longer. They sat with those truths for a moment. I don't want to hide anymore, he continued, and I don't want to pretend I don't care. She looked at him closely, her eyes calm and honest. I don't want to carry everything alone anymore. There was no dramatic pause, no sudden movement, just understanding. They did not rush into labels or promises. Instead, they agreed on something simple and real, to walk forward together honestly and without fear. From that point on, life began to feel balanced. The farmer still worked the land, but now his days felt shared even when he worked alone. The Apache woman continued helping her family, but she no longer felt like her strength belonged only to others. People noticed the change. The farmer smiled more. He spoke more. He no longer avoided gatherings when necessary. He did not become loud or bold, but he became present. He learned that being seen did not mean losing himself. She, too, changed in ways others noticed. She rested more. She allowed softness into her strength. She laughed more freely. She stopped carrying every burden as if it were hers alone. They supported each other in quiet ways. He listened when she needed to speak. She stood beside him when he felt uncertain. Neither tried to fix the other. They simply stayed. One evening, as the land rested under the stars, she said something that stayed with him forever. "Being with you doesn't make me smaller," she said. "It makes me human." He replied softly, "Being with you doesn't make me weak. It makes me brave." They understood then that love did not need to be loud to be powerful. It did not need to demand or rush. It only needed honesty and respect. The farmer realized that true strength was not found in isolation, but in shared effort. The Apache woman realized that strength multiplied when shared, not divided. They did not promise forever. They promised today, and sometimes that was enough. As seasons continued to change, their bond remained steady. The land witnessed it quietly. The fields, the wind, the sky that had watched both of them grow separately and now together. The shy farmer was no longer hiding from life. The strong Apache woman was no longer carrying it alone. And in that simple truth, both found something they had searched for in different ways all along. Not perfection, not certainty, but peace. Together they stood, not because they needed to, but because they chose to.